The room fell silent the second you walked in, not obviously, not dramatically, not with a crash of thunder or a slammed door, just silence. The kind of silence that breathes down your neck, the kind that tastes like surveillance. You knew before. You even looked up. They were watching you, not because you were loud, not because you begged for attention, but because you exist. Because your presence, quiet, steady, unassuming, disrupts something ancient inside people, and it hurts them. You took your seat at the back of the room, just like always, avoiding the spotlight, keeping your head down, just trying to get through the day without another weird shift in the energy. But it never worked. Not really, because when you're chosen, you could dress in shadows and still glow. You knew it was happening again when her voice dropped to a whisper 2 seats behind you. That familiar giggle. Then the faintest phrase, "Who does she think she is?" That sentence, again, not asked out loud, not asked directly, but always asked about you. You didn't flinch. You didn't turn around. You didn't even sigh. You were used to it, but it still burned. Why does existing feel like confrontation? Why does walking in purpose feel like warfare? Why does your quiet confidence spark such loud insecurity in people? You didn't want this. You never signed up for it. All you did was follow the inner pull, the voice that said, "You don't belong here. There's more for you." And now you carry a presence that makes people uncomfortable even when you say nothing at all, because something about you reminds them of who they're pretending not to be. The class carried on, but your spirit was alert, not paranoid, prophetic. It wasn't just them, it was the atmosphere, heavy, charged, like something unseen was pacing the walls. You'd felt it before in church, in family dinners, in friend groups that slowly turned sour. The shift, the unspoken resentment that rises when a chosen one stops shrinking. Because when you stop making yourself small, everyone else has to confront the fact that they've been hiding too. You remember the first time you felt it, age 12, your mother had just told you, you don't need to act so deep all the time. You'd only asked a question, a real one, about why people pretend to be happy when they're not. She didn't answer the question. She didn't like the question, because truth offends the masks, and you, even at that age, were allergic to pretending. That was the day you learned to fold in your wings, not because you hated them, but because everyone around you acted like they were too bright, too big, too much, and it worked for a while, until God started whispering again at night, in dreams. In moments when everything else was quiet and the truth could finally speak. I made you different on purpose. Stop apologizing for it. And that's when it started. The watching, the gossip, the sudden shift in people you once loved. They started to side-eye your breakthroughs. They made jokes about your growth. They called your peace arrogance and your boundaries rudeness. But underneath it all was a truth they would never admit. They were jealous, not because you were better than them, but because you refused to betray your own soul just to be liked, because you had the courage to go inward when everyone else went, along with the crowd, because you didn't need applause to keep moving, because you listened to the divine when others silenced it with noise. And that kind of self-awareness, that kind of alignment, it terrifies people who've spent their whole lives pretending not to feel the void inside them. You didn't need to flex. You didn't need to brag. You just were. And in a world addicted to validation, being at peace with yourself is the loudest rebellion of all. So yes, everyone's watching you. But not because you're failing, because you're rising, and your rise exposes their refusal to evolve. Every time you say no with conviction, they see the places they've said yes to, things that stole their spirit. Every time you walk away from fake love, they see the cages they chose to stay in. Every time you speak truth, their lies get louder in their own heads. And instead of going inward and healing, they choose the easier path. Jealousy, it's more comfortable to attack you than to confront themselves. And yet, you still love them. You still pray for them. You still wish them peace. You still hold space for the possibility that one day they'll wake up and remember who they are, because that's what chosen ones do. Even when betrayed, we don't retaliate. Even when misunderstood, we don't shrink, because we know who we are. And that's what they envy the most. Not the material things, not your look, not your talent, but your knowing, your clarity, your alignment, your refusal to abandon, your authenticity, everything when it costs you everything. And now you're no longer hiding. You're no longer twisting yourself to make others feel secure. You're no longer trying to be palatable to people who never liked you anyway. You walk into rooms like you belong, because you do. You speak when you're led. You rest when you need to, and when you feel that jealous energy, you don't panic. You recognize it, because chosen ones don't fight jealousy. We outgrow it. We elevate so quietly. Our enemies end up applauding by accident. We love so deeply, even betrayal can't infect our hearts. We move so divinely. Demons disguise themselves as friends just to get close, but they can't copy your spirit. They can't mimic your peace. They can't reproduce the process that shaped you, because you were forged, not fabricated. And that's why they watch, because even in their jealousy, they secretly hope you'll win. Because if you can survive everything they threw at you and still rise, maybe, just maybe, there's still hope for them too. But this isn't where the story ends, because in section 2, we go deeper into the private betrayals, the fake support, and the moment you realized that jealousy wasn't just passive, it was strategic, and someone close to you wasn't watching you out of admiration. They were waiting for the perfect moment to strike. There's a silence before betrayal, almost like the air thickens. You can feel it, like the sudden drop in temperature that comes just before a storm. And just like that storm, it's not the initial strike that hurts the most, it's the aftermath. The moment it hits you. The moment you realize that the person closest to you wasn't watching out of admiration, but out of calculating resentment. That moment is the one that cracks your heart open. You had always thought of her as a sister, a confidant, someone who understood the weight of being different. She was there when you first felt the weight of your calling. When the world started to notice you, she was there, the first to congratulate you, the first to remind you that it wasn't your fault you were chosen. You were always special, but it had never been something that divided you until now. And at first, you didn't see it. Not really. You'd always believed in her. Her kind words, the way she helped you when your energy started shifting, her quiet assurances that you weren't crazy, you weren't losing your mind, until one day you felt the shift. It wasn't in words. It wasn't in any clear action, at least not at first. It was the subtle things, the sudden coldness, the way her smiles felt like they were being pulled out of her, the silence in her voice when she spoke your name, and you knew before she even said anything that she was changing. At first it was small, a comment that seemed innocent enough. You're so lucky to be chosen, you know? Not everyone gets that. But you knew, deep down, it wasn't about luck. Not for you. You had fought for this. You'd walked through fire to get here. There. was no luck involved. It was your path, your calling, and so you smiled. Yeah, but it doesn't feel like luck most of the time. Her laugh was sharp, forced. Well, you must be grateful, right? I mean, it's everything you've always wanted, isn't it? You didn't know what to say. Maybe you didn't know what you wanted, or maybe you wanted something more than just the crown, the attention, the recognition, but you kept it inside, knowing that no matter how much she was trying to understand, she could never truly get it. She wasn't chosen, and therein lay the problem. The seeds of envy were buried deep, and you hadn't even noticed, at least not until the first crack appeared. One evening, months after that conversation, you came across her phone by accident. It wasn't intentional. You were borrowing her charger, reaching for it when your eyes caught the screen and your heart dropped. It wasn't her messages that made you freeze. It wasn't her social media. It was a thread of private texts between her and someone you didn't recognize. She's not as great as she thinks she is. I've been around her long enough to know the truth. She's weak. She's scared. People just don't see it, but I do. And I can't wait until she falls. That'll show everyone how real she is. You could feel the room closing in on you as the words burned through your thoughts. She had been speaking to someone else, someone who clearly shared the same bitterness, someone who had been feeding her insecurities. The betrayal wasn't just whispered, was planned. The worst part wasn't even the words themselves. It was the fact that this person, the one who had been a sister to you, your closest friend, had been quietly waiting for the perfect moment. She hadn't even been honest enough to confront you directly. No, she'd been wearing a mask the whole time, pretending to be supportive, while on the inside, she had been building a fortress of jealousy. The kind of jealousy that burns deep, that eats away at someone's soul, that turns love into resentment. It didn't matter that you hadn't done anything wrong. That's the thing about being chosen. People feel entitled to your light, to your energy, to your success. And when they can't have it, they start to tear you down slowly, insidiously. First, it's with doubts. Subtle suggestions that maybe, just maybe, you're not as special as you think you are. Then it escalates. A shift in behavior. A comment here, a joke there. And if you're not careful, you start to doubt yourself. You start to wonder if maybe they're right. But they're not. You're chosen, and you are stronger than they could ever understand. But now you're standing at a crossroads. You can feel the betrayal. The weight of her lies pressing on your chest, threatening to suffocate you. The truth stings, but it's freeing at the same time. Because now you see her for what she truly is, a wolf in sheep's clothing. You should confront her. You know that. You could feel your hands trembling, the urge to call her out, to demand the truth. But deep down, you know that confrontation might only make things worse. It could shatter everything, and you've already lost too much. You're tired of losing, so you decide to play it differently. You don't need to raise your voice. You don't need to shout. You're done with that. You've learned the power of silence, the kind of silence that screams louder than words. But it's not just about her anymore. It's about the world around you, the eyes that linger, the ones that envy what you have but will never say it. It's about the way people watch your every move, waiting for you to fall. They think you don't know, but you do. And the thing is, you're tired of hiding. You're tired of shrinking yourself for the comfort of those around you. You were chosen for a reason, and maybe it's time you embrace that. The next day, the mask slips again. She approaches you, her eyes avoiding yours, her voice a little too high-pitched. I didn't mean to hurt you. You know I've always supported you, right? You don't answer right away. You just look at her. There's nothing you need to say anymore. The truth is already in the air between you. She knows you know, and then, without warning, you see it. The flicker in her eyes. The one that cracks open the lie she's been hiding. She's scared now, not of you but of what she's become. The game has shifted. You hold your ground, letting her unravel before you, letting the silence stretch longer than ever before. And just as you open your mouth to speak, to lay bare the words you know are bubbling up, she says something that will change everything, something that will turn your world upside down. Fine, she hissed. You want to know the truth. I never believed in you. The words came out of her mouth like venom, raw and cold. She wasn't pretending anymore. The veil was gone, and what stood in front of you wasn't the friend you had once trusted, was the reality of what jealousy turns people into. She folded her arms across her chest, breathing heavily now, like some weight had finally been released from her soul. You walk around like the universe handpicked you, like you're some divine vessel, but you're just lucky. You're not better than the rest of us. There it was, the confession that had been festering behind every fake smile, every forced compliment. She had always envied you, not just because of your gifts, but because you never asked for them. You were simply chosen. And that, to people who are desperate to be seen, is unbearable. But her words didn't break you. They only confirmed what your spirit had already been whispering. You'd been sensing the shift for months, feeling eyes that stared not with admiration, but with bitterness. You'd felt the slow withdrawal of genuine love around you, replaced by masks and mirrors. And now, finally, the mask was off. You stared at her, not with anger, but with clarity. It was never about being better, you said softly. It was about being called. Your voice didn't shake. You didn't feel the need to defend your worth or prove your struggle. That's the difference between the chosen and the jealous you. Don't need validation. You know what you've been through. You carry scars no one sees. You've fought battles in silence, in isolation. You've bled in places no one ever noticed. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your anointing. And that's what made her hate you even more. You saw the rage in her eyes ignite as she stepped closer. You think I don't struggle. You think I haven't been through hell, too. I know you have, you said, still calm. But the fire made me pure. It made you bitter. Her jaw clenched. You're so full of yourself. No, you replied. I'm full of God. That was it. You saw it clear as day. The demon behind her flinched. Not literally, but spiritually. Because that's what this has always been. Not a war of personalities, but of principalities. You weren't fighting your friend. You were fighting what had attached itself to her, and it couldn't hide anymore. There's a reason why chosen ones are surrounded by betrayal. Why people who once loved you start turning cold. It's not personal, it's spiritual. The light you carry irritates the demons others haven't dealt with. Your presence brings conviction, not because you're trying to judge them, but because the truth you walk in forces them to face their own darkness. She wasn't mad at you. She was mad at how your life made her feel about hers. And when people can't rise to your level, they try to drag you down to theirs. You think you're above us? She asked again, voice trembling now. No, you said, eyes locked onto hers. I'm just not beneath my calling. That silence, That pause after truth cuts deep. That's what filled the air between you. But what happened next, you weren't prepared for it. Tears welled up in her eyes, not from regret, but from frustration. "I prayed to you, no," she said. "I begged God to use me, to give me a sign, to give me what you have. And I got silence. But you just get everything." Your heart cracked not because of the jealousy, but because of the pain behind it. That's the hard part about being chosen. Sometimes, the people who turn against you are the very ones who wanted to be you, not because they hate you, but because they were desperate to be seen by the same God who elevated you. And now you had a choice. You could destroy her with truth, expose her jealousy, walk away with righteous anger, or you could do what only a truly chosen one can do. Forgive her, because you understood something she didn't. Being chosen isn't a reward, it's a responsibility. God did hear you. You said gently, but what you prayed for wasn't your path. You wanted my glory without my story, but you didn't see the nights I cried, the nights I begged him to take it away. You don't know what it costs me to carry this light. She looked away, ashamed. Now, then why do you look so strong? Because broken things shine differently, and you meant it. Every time the world tried to break you, the cracks only let more light in. That's what people don't understand. They see your elevation, but not your excavation. They see your anointing, but not your agony. They see the crown, but never the cross. She stood there, stunned. No more words to throw. The demon had lost. It's gripped up, because when you walk in unshakable identity, demons tremble. They can't manipulate you. They can't bait you into offense. They can't distract you with pain. Why? Because your authority is rooted in humility. She turned to leave. You didn't stop her. There was nothing left to say. Her journey wasn't your responsibility anymore. But before she walked out the door, she paused. "Maybe one day," she said, without turning around, "I'll understand." You didn't reply. You just whispered a prayer she'd never hear. Because even when chosen ones are betrayed, they bless those who curse them, not because they're weak, but because they know who fights for them. That's the power of being chosen. It's not about popularity. It's not about being liked. It's about knowing that heaven backs you even when earth rejects you. And sometimes, jealousy is just misplaced longing, and your existence reminds them of everything. They think they've lost, so let them watch. Let them talk. Let them whisper. Because while they're watching your life, like a storm on the horizon, they forget one thing: you were born from the storm, and no weapon formed against you will prosper. Not even the ones forged in secret conversations. You walk into the room, and the energy shifts. You've felt it before, too many times now, to pretend it's coincidence. The conversations slow, smiles tighten, eyes scan you with curiosity, and something else beneath it. Something that flickers for just a second before it vanishes. You've learned to recognize that flicker, envy wrapped in politeness. It used to confuse you. Now it confirms who you are. See, when you're chosen, people don't react to your words, they react to your presence. They feel what you carry before you ever say a thing. And if they haven't dealt with their own wounds, they'll see your existence as a threat, not a blessing. Because deep down, they sense it. You were born with something they can't fake. And no matter how quiet you are, no matter how humble, how kind, how soft-spoken, they know you're different, marked, watched. And in this world, being watched feels less like admiration and more like being hunted. Let me say this to you clearly. If you've ever walked into a space and felt suddenly unwelcome without a reason, you were never imagining it. There's a war happening around you, not with weapons, not with fists, but with stares, with whispers, with invisible judgments. You're fighting battles without swinging, because chosen ones don't fight flesh and blood. You fight the spirit of comparison, resentment, projection, and, half the time, it's coming from the people you once called friends. Why? Because when God marks you, it unmasks others. It reveals their insecurities, their unhealed jealousy, their silent resentment that you carry light, while they still sit in shadow. You don't have to gloat for them to feel inferior. You don't have to shine on purpose. You simply exist. And that threatens the demons they've learned to live with. And so you become their mirror, not because you reflect their beauty, but because you reflect their lack. And mirrors, they don't lie, so they start to treat you differently. A little colder, a little distant, but not so obvious that anyone else notices. Just enough to leave you wondering, did I do something wrong? Let me free you right now. No, you didn't. Your presence was simply too honest for their comfort. And yet, you keep showing up. You keep walking in rooms like you don't see the glances. You keep loving them, even when you sense their bitterness. You keep praying for them, even when you know their tongues have been sharpening behind closed doors. That's what makes you dangerous. Not your strength, but your ability to keep your heart clean in a filthy world. The real war isn't outside of you, it's in the decision to not let their poison infect your purpose. And trust me, they're watching. Oh, they're always watching. They scroll through your posts, not to support you, but to find something to criticize. They ask about you in circles you're not in, just to see if your life is falling apart yet. They want to know, is the favor still on you? Is the light still shining? Did they finally break under pressure? Because nothing would comfort their misery more than seeing the one whose sword finally stumble. But here's the plot twist. Even your falling is divine. Because when you're chosen, even your pain has purpose. Even your wilderness seasons are part of your warfare. Even when you look broken on the outside, heaven is building something unshakable within. So let them whisper, let them speculate, let them think you're finished. Because what they don't know is, God hides his chosen ones in plain sight. You're not broken, you're being rebuilt. You're not declining, you're deepening. You're not behind, you're being hidden for glory. And when you rise again, because you will, they'll realize the thing they tried to mock was a miracle in progress. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Some people will never celebrate your comeback, not because they don't see your success, but because they hoped you'd stay. Broken, your healing threatens them. Your restoration proves that favor is real. And your peace, that peace you carry even after the betrayal, the heartbreak, the silence, that peace is what makes demons tremble. Because nothing is more terrifying to your enemies than a chosen one who refused to turn bitter. That's where your real power lies. Not in shouting your victories, but in walking in quiet authority. You don't need to announce that. You're blessed. Your life reveals it. You don't need to defend yourself to the jealous. Your fruit speaks louder than their opinions ever could. And when they keep watching them, you'll notice something. They're not just watching with curiosity anymore, they're watching with confusion. Because they can't figure it out. How did you survive everything they threw at you? How did you stay soft after all the coldness? How did you glow even after they tried to dim you? And the answer is simple. You weren't powered by applause. You were sustained by purpose. You don't need a stage to be powerful. You don't need a crowd to be chosen. You just need obedience to the call on your life. And when that obedience turns into elevation, even your enemies will have to acknowledge there's something divine about you. They won't say it. They'll never admit it out loud. But in their silence, you'll feel it. They're afraid of what you'll become because they already sense who you are. So walk tall, not with pride, but with holy awareness. You were born to disturb, atimos, pash, to expose falsehood with your truth, to awaken what's dead in others just by breathing near them. Yes, they're watching. Yes, they're jealous. They're jealous. Yes. Some of them smile while secretly waiting for your downfall. But let them, because the same God who anointed you is the same God who will keep preparing a table in front of them, not to shame them, but to show them what it looks like when heaven backs a soul that never bowed. And you just keep showing up, keep glowing, keep loving, keep praying, keep walking in rooms like the light that you are. Because no matter how many eyes are on you, only one set of eyes matters in the end. And He already called you chosen. There comes a moment in every chosen one's life when the jealousy stops hiding. It begins with subtle things, cold shoulders, quiet judgments, strange silences in the middle of your joy. But eventually, it mutates. It becomes sharp, strategic, intentional, and if you're not careful, you'll mistake it for ordinary conflict. You'll think, maybe we're just growing apart. Maybe I'm overthinking this. But the truth, you're not imagining it. You're being targeted. See, jealousy left unchecked will always evolve. It doesn't just feel anymore, it plots. Because when a person cannot dim your light, they will try to control your lamp. When they can't match your favor, they'll question your worth. When they can't imitate your anointing, they'll attack your name. And they'll do it quietly, smiling, in circles you once trusted, through words dressed as concern. I don't know, there's just something off about them lately. They've changed. I hope the success isn't going to their head. But here's what they'll never say out loud. They're hurt that it wasn't them. They're angry that you soared past limits they accepted. And now, every time they see you, they're reminded of their own refusal to rise. That's the burden of being chosen. Your wins will always offend those who settled. And sometimes, those people are close, too close. Friends, family, mentors, people who once clapped for you, now watching with arms folded, and it hurts. God knows it hurts. Not because you need their approval, but because you wanted to bring them with you. You wanted to rise together. You prayed for their healing. You sowed into their lives. You stayed loyal through their wilderness seasons. But the moment you stepped into your light, they became distant, and now they've become agents of sabotage, unaware that their bitterness is not just emotionally, it's spiritual. Because jealousy is not just a feeling, it's an entry point. An unguarded heart filled with envy becomes a tool for darkness. That's why some of your hardest betrayals didn't come from enemies. They came from those who sat at your table, those who knew your secrets, those who prayed with you one day and gossiped about you the next. Chosen one, listen closely. You're not just dealing with human emotion, you're dealing with spirits that hate what you carry. And when a person refuses to confront their jealousy, they become available to any force looking to silence your voice. That's when the sabotage begins. It shows up in opportunities that mysteriously vanish, in rumors that spread with no source, in friends who suddenly switch with no explanation, and for a while, it breaks you. You ask God, why would you let them get so close? Why didn't you warn me? But what if I told you? He did. He allowed it on purpose. Because part of your anointing is learning to survive what was meant to shatter you. Part of your elevation is discerning wolves in sheep's clothing. You had to see who was for you and who was just near you. You had to lose the illusion of loyalty so you could learn how to walk alone, but not empty, so you could stop depending on applause to feel valid. Because the higher your calling, the lonelier the path. And God knew. If He didn't allow that sabotage, you would have taken dead weight into the next level. So don't mourn the loss too long. Yes, it was unfair. Yes, it was painful. But it was divine protection disguised as betrayal. Because you didn't lose them, they lost the chance to witness your full becoming. And when the dust settles, you'll realize something. They couldn't stop you. All the gossip, all the schemes, all the manipulation, it didn't work. Because you were never sustained by their loyalty. You were kept by divine assignment. They tried to sabotage the spotlight God gave you. But what they didn't realize is, your light isn't external, it's eternal. You don't glow because of praise. You glow because of purpose. And here's the most beautiful part. You didn't retaliate. You didn't fight dirty. You didn't expose them publicly. You didn't stoop to their level, and that is what makes you unstoppable. Your clean hands are your weapon. Your silent strength is your strategy. Because when God chooses someone, He also teaches them the art of grace under fire. He lets the sabotage happen not so you can crumble, but so you can rise with proof. Proof that no weapon formed against you can prosper. Proof that oil can't be stolen. Proof that favor isn't fragile. And now they have to watch you grow. Not because you want revenge, but because you obeyed God while they obeyed their ego. And when jealousy turns to sabotage, and sabotage turns to silence, that's when your elevation becomes undeniable. They'll hear about your favor, even when you don't mention it. They'll feel your peace, even when you walk away, because chosen ones don't need revenge. Your success is the revelation. Your joy is the rebuke. Your protection is the evidence that heaven fought for you behind the scenes. So, lift your head. You didn't lose anything you needed. You didn't miss anything meant for you. You didn't fail. You were filtered, and what's coming next? It's not just restoration, it's a reward for how you handled the sabotage. A double portion, new circles, doors that no rumor can close. And most of all, a peace so powerful, you'll thank God for every betrayal that freed you. Let them watch, let them wonder, let them sit in silence. Because your glow is no longer for their validation, it's for God's glory. And what's next? Even you don't see it coming, but heaven does, and it's magnificent. You feel it before you even walk in. The eyes dot the shift in energy, the subtle tension, hanging in the air like static before a storm. People don't look at you the same anymore, not with warmth, not with love. They look with curiosity, caution, and sometimes envy wrapped in politeness. You can't quite explain it. You've done nothing wrong, but the moment you enter the room, you change the room. It's not arrogance, it's just truth. You carry something they don't understand, and the thing is, you didn't ask for this. You didn't beg to be set apart. You didn't plead for the spiritual weight you now carry. You didn't crave attention. You only wanted alignment. But when God marks you, the mark is visible. Even when you're quiet, even when you shrink, even when you try to hide, they still notice. They still whisper, Because chosen ones are not meant to fit in. You were built to be watched. Heaven made you loud, even in your silence, powerful, even in your pain, magnetic, even when you're misunderstood. That's why people stare. That's why they ask about you when you're gone. That's why they mimic you, stalk you, talk about you, even copy you. Because your spirit is disruptive, not because it's evil, but because it exposes what others have buried. Your discipline convicts their laziness. Your growth highlights their stagnation. Your clarity shakes the dust off their confusion, and they resent you for it. Without knowing why, they call you intense, too deep, too distant. But secretly, they're watching. And deep down, they wish they had what you have. Peace that can't be faked. Authority that can't be bought. Joy that survives fire. And a light that reveals what's been hiding in the dark. But this isn't just about personality, it's spiritual. You were given eyes to see beyond the surface, a heart that hears what isn't said, a discernment that detects the spiritual atmosphere behind every smile. So yes, you're misunderstood. Yes, you walk alone, sometimes. Yes, people label you strange. But here's the truth. You are dangerous to darkness, and the people most agitated by you are often those who are still wrestling with their own shadows. You were born into warfare, marked for impact, designed to be set apart, not to be worshipped or praised, but to be witnessed. Because when people see you, truly see you, they don't just see a person, they see evidence. Evidence that favor is real, that peace is possible, that God still raises up nobodies to shake kingdoms, and that scares them. Because if your obedience brought you this far, what does that say about their disobedience? So they cling to jealousy instead of transformation. They sabotage instead of support. They gossip instead of grow. And through it all, you've kept walking, kept serving, kept healing in silence, and now you've crossed over. You're no longer the same person who needed applause. You're not hungry for validation. You don't shrink to be loved anymore, because now you know. Some people were sent to observe, not to understand. Some were sent to react, not to receive, and others, they were placed in your life only to watch as God prepares a table in front of them. That's why they're watching, not because you're arrogant, not because you've changed, but because they have. No choice, heaven arranged it. Your anointing was never meant to be private. When God lifts someone, He does it publicly, not to humiliate others, but to inspire them, to expose the real from the fake, to awaken the ones who are asleep. You are a living testimony that favor will always find who it belongs to, and that scares those who tried to cheat their way there, those who relied on image instead of intimacy with God, those who posted about purpose but never submitted to it. You, chosen one, are proof that you can't fake the oil. You either paid the price, or you didn't, and your price was heavy. They don't know what it cost you to carry this light. They don't know the nights you cried, begging God to remove the calling. They don't see the spiritual battles you fought, the betrayals you've endured, the loneliness you've mastered. All they see is the glow, but they weren't there during the crushing, so now they watch. Some with admiration, some with confusion, others with quiet rage. Let them, because here's the twist, they never saw coming. They're watching. It's part of the plan. God needed them to see what obedience produces. He needed them to witness a life that couldn't be bought, faked, or duplicated. So you'll keep walking, you'll keep rising, you'll keep glowing, and they'll keep watching, because they must. And maybe, just maybe, one day your life will spark something in them. A repentance, a longing, a hunger to finally surrender. And if not, that's not your concern. You weren't chosen to be liked. You were chosen to be used. And when you fully embrace that truth, you'll stop shrinking for rooms you've already outgrown. You'll stop waiting to be invited. When you were born to build your own table, the watching doesn't stop. But now, it doesn't shake you, because you finally understand. Their eyes on you are not a threat. They're a confirmation of your assignment, of your power, of your endurance. And from this moment forward, you walk boldly. You speak boldly. You rise boldly, because the same ones who watched you suffer will now watch you soar. And when they ask how, you'll smile softly and say, "This glow, it's not mine, it's the glory." If this story resonated with your spirit, if you've ever felt watched, misunderstood, or underestimated, then you are not alone. You are chosen. Tap the like button if you've walked this path. Drop a comment and tell your story. Someone out there needs your testimony. Subscribe and share this with another chosen one who's glowing through the warfare. Your journey is not just about you, it's about every soul watching, wondering if it's possible. Let them watch, because you're light. It's a sermon all by itself.